Welcome to High Point, North Carolina, home of the Panthers in purple and white. Conference play is underway and High Point looks to defend their throne as last year's regular season champs. The road won't be easy though, as 8 other squads in the conference are looking to set fire to the jungle and keep the Panthers from winning that Big South title. We've got your coverage all season long. This is the Panther Pregame.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into this week's installment of the Panther Pregame. I'm Anthony Evangelista alongside my good friend Scott Semanchik, and we've got a great Big South matchup on our hands tonight with the Presbyterian College Blue Hose coming into town to take on your High Point University Panthers.
Yeah, of course, a great matchup between these two teams, still really early in the Big South Conference season, so both of them are still fighting for every little place that they can get, both coming off of losses. Presbyterian on a bit of a streak of losses. They're trying to turn their luck around. And for High Point, they're just trying to go and get something restarted at home, which in the Big South, a lot of teams have had success for so far this year.
Yeah, and High Point's last loss came against Longwood this past Thursday on ESPNU. We're going to be taking a look at some of the statistics from that game. High Point's late comeback effort fell just short as Longwood shot over 50% from the floor and almost 43% from three.
Yeah, and you can see at those numbers of how they compare. Of course, it was a competitive game, so you're expecting those numbers to be close for the most part. Big things I want to point out, 7 steals for High Point. They had 7 free possessions compared to Longwood gaining 1 off of a steal. Couldn't cash all of them in. The shooting stats for High Point were really disappointing. They were shooting 22% in the first 30 minutes of the game and then kind of upped it up a little bit at the end. And those free throw percentage for Longwood, 55% able to go and take a win out. That's just a gritty play through the rest of your team. And High Point did a great job at the line, but they couldn't work their way there enough.
Well, part of that difference was at the very end. I mean, a deep Chase Johnston three with just 11 seconds to go tied the game up at 80 apiece. But right after that, the final possession, they get a go-ahead jumper by Longwood's Colby Garland with just a couple seconds that really sealed the deal there.
Yeah, it was a tough situation. As we saw, there was 55% free throw shooting there, and there was 11 seconds left when Longwood started that possession. I think in that situation, you have a good chance of just going and taking an early foul on that possession. You maybe lose a second and a half. Colby Johnson was one that was shooting well from the foul line, but that was, I think he was 60%. Their best player on the line was 70% on the day. You still want to take your chances at the free throw line there with how unsuccessful they were. Go and potentially they get 1 point, you get possession back, can take it over the mid-court line, call timeout, set a full play up. You'll probably have 5 or 6 seconds instead of what resulted. They, I think, had 2.5 left.
Not even, I want to say. And look, at the end of the day, you want to play to win the game. And it didn't really seem like that last possession, High Point was doing that. It seems like they were playing for overtime, tried to get that defensive stop and then go straight into an OT possession. And that just wasn't the case. Longwood, like you said, had not the best free throw shooting night. And typically they are a good free throw shooting team, but nonetheless, from the floor, I think it would have been much better for them to go and try to get that second possession and maybe, like you said, set up a play afterwards.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, what put in that 80-80 game was a massive three-pointer by Chase Johnson. He had a great day behind the arc, but another person who was a part of that late comeback was Simon Hildebrandt, had a massive three. We're going to go over to Jimmy Roselli, who sat down with Simon as a new person here on the team.
Simon Hildebrandt is a junior transfer from Winnipeg, Canada, whose skill set has truly made a difference for this Panthers squad. However, this impact is something that has been worked for, as the difference in American play versus Canadian play is something he emphasized.
I mean, the biggest difference, I would say, from playing college basketball in Canada compared to down here is just the level of physicality and the level of athletes. Down here, there's so many bigger, more athletic, stronger guys, and the pace of play is a lot faster. Or back in Canada, it's a lot more like skilled guys who we don't have those top-end elite athletes, and that would be the biggest difference, I would say.
Hildebrandt also mentioned how playing in America has always been a lifelong goal, and after overcoming many challenges, has become an incredible achievement within his own career.
My goal ever since I was a kid was to play Division I basketball and, play in March Madness one day. And, I went through some ups and downs in high school. It never really worked out, so I had just gone to university in Canada for 2 years. And then I had this amazing opportunity to come back and kind of fulfill this lifelong dream of mine, and I jumped on it.
After achieving his Division I dreams, Hildebrandt spoke about the impact having an American audience had on his play.
The biggest thing for me was just having this big student section kind of cheering us on, and all these fans, like whether it's like snowstorm out or not, just kind of the energy they bring us, and like that first time being able to play here was unreal, just to see all the love that everybody at High Point has for our team.
Not only is Hildebrandt a great player on the court, but he also has the kindness to send me a little give and go, which completed my own little basketball career.
Here we go. Yeah, baby. Now hit this out.
With Simon Hildebrandt, I'm Jimmy Roselli with Panther Pregame.
Thanks for that, Jimmy. An in-depth look at one of the most underrated members of this High Point squad, and by the looks of it, I think that Jimmy could be a part of that team too. I mean, hey, if broadcasting doesn't work out for you, Jimmy, I know that you could go pro. Nonetheless, staying on the topic of High Point basketball, before we get into our keys for the game, our very own Jonah Aylwine sat down with High Point point guard Bobby Pettiford to talk about the transfer portal.
Bobby Pettiford is currently in his first season with the High Point Panthers after stints with Kansas and East Carolina. What has his collegiate career been like so far between the transfer portal, getting recruited out of high school, and now his time at High Point?
Being kind of a hometown kid, from Durham, it's just been kind of a big priority to stay home. And High Point was the best place for me. I love the offense. I love what they've been doing. This past year I've seen the changes in just, the High Point program altogether, and I had a surgery that kept me out for a long time, and that made my body a priority, so that was the biggest thing for me.
According to Bobby Pettiford, what does the transfer portal look like from an insider's perspective?
The portal, it's tough. It's a lot of guys that are just as good as you. They got maybe listed higher than you, and then maybe even if it's guys that aren't quite as good as you, it's still just 1,000 players. So coaches are trying to watch your every play. They're going through, like in the portal time, coaches sit on the thing and they watch players that they need for their team. So you just kind of sit around and wait a little bit. You kind of know what teams are your fit, so you kind of sort it down there before you even get started, especially with the short time period you have.
Pettiford talks about his weird transition getting recruited out of high school.
Well, for me coming out of high school, it was kind of weird because COVID was around. So, it was masked up. Coaches couldn't come to certain games. There was a lot of online watching, and for what coaches need, they want to see you in person. But luckily, playing in the summer with CP3, I was highly recruited. Like from freshman to junior year, I had my name started buzzing around North Carolina and nationally. I had got ranked on ESPN.
What are some things that Pettiford has taken out of his time at High Point thus far?
I've learned more with education and, the people we bring here. I think, High Point prepares you more for off-the-court success, not just on. So, I know they brought the owners of Netflix. You've seen, Steve Harvey, just successful people that can kind of inspire you. So I think that's the best thing I learned off the court, like how to take the, I need this degree, I want to graduate, invest money into other things. So they teach you like the real world things as well.
From the Panther Pregame, my name's Jonah Aylwine. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Jonah. I'm a bit sad not to see you drive into the hoop like Jimmy did at the end of that one, but nonetheless, a very unique view at Bobby Pettiford and his time in the transfer portal that's really changed a lot over the past couple of years.
Yeah, it's really interesting what he's gone through. Of course, as a grad student here now, he's had his time at a few different places, Kansas, ECU, now here. He's also had his fair share of injuries. He got plagued by it through most of his career, and he talked about that as well a little bit. But going and what he's brought to this team from just a maturity standpoint and an experience standpoint, you can talk to all these kids on the team. They look up to him and they're trusted him with the ball. If you'll always see them during the play, if something goes wrong, they're kicking it out to him. They know that they want him to have the ball, whether that's because of his handling or his passing. One thing I want to point out with him is if you look at his dribbling, he keeps that ball low, very low, near his knees. He's very efficient with his dribble.
Hey, well, you know what? I've talked to multiple members of the team, and they've all said the same thing, that Pettiford is the best passer they've ever played with. He knows exactly where to get the ball at any point, and he's great for creating those shots, being a facilitator, a floor general almost. And you know what, when you have a national champion like Pettiford on your team, it's definitely going to help you out there. So with that in mind, let's focus on the game at hand. With Presbyterian coming into the Cabane Center for the first time these teams match up this year. Scott, what are your keys to a Panther victory for tonight?
One of the biggest ones that I have to say is to start the ball down low. Play the big man game. You could always say that when you have somebody like Jocelyn Bodo at 7 feet on your team, but truly today you need to work it down low. The tallest player on Presbyterian was 6'10" in Jonah Pierce. He got injured earlier in the year in November, so he's out. Their next tallest is 6'8". That's the same size as Kamani Hamilton, who could also have a great game. He's been doing wonderful lately, but you need to be able to work it down low, whether it's between Bodo, whether it's between Hildebrandt, whether it's between Abugalanua. All of them, they need to go and work down low, and with that will come my second point. You need to get that three-point numbers up. We saw it with the Longwood game, a pretty poor shooting numbers from three. They had a 22% three-point percentage going into the last 10 minutes of the game, last quarter of the game. That was 54% of the total shots that they threw up were three-pointers, and they only made 22% of those. So the working it down low will then go and create double teams with the size difference, kick it out to some of your three-point shooters, especially Chase Johnson, 50 for 104 this year. That is second best percentage at 48% in the entire nation. You need to let him run through the ball. He showed it on Thursday night's game. He'll show it again every time that he gets the ball behind the arc that he is a great shooter. My final point that I think is very crucial, and it's something that they've been doing well and they just need to continue doing well, is ball security. High Point's one of the best teams in the nation in ball security, only averaging 10 turnovers a game. So they're keeping that number low. They're keeping the ball on their side. They're not giving up free possessions. If you know you're going to have that, and I think we already talked about it, Bobby Pettiford is going to be a massive part of that. Crisp passes, keeping the ball low and to himself. Limiting those turnovers, it can kind of expand your offense to be able to go and pick shots that you really, really want rather than just going and throwing up some stuff because you're afraid the turnover is going to happen.
Well, you know what? Coach Huss and the High Point faithful are definitely hoping that all three of those points do get hit tonight. One thing that I want to quickly tap on is Chase Johnston. He's been one of the most efficient players in the NCAA on offense this year. He's in top 25 for offensive efficiency percentage, and he's been continuously lights out. So, you know what? Get him the ball and let him keep shooting. I think that's definitely something where they've been doing it, just got to keep that formula going. But unfortunately, that's all the time we're going to have for today. Here on the Panther pregame, we'll be sending you to the Cabane Center to watch the Presbyterian Blue Hose take on your High Point Panthers. I'm Anthony Evangelista alongside Scott Semanchik. Thank you for watching, and as always, roll Thurs.